In this video, I'll be going over rounding to 1, 2, and 3 decimal places. Here's an example. And we are rounding to 1 decimal place. So we're going to go ahead and place underline under the first decimal place. In this case, it's the 6th here. And that's also referred to as the 10th place. So what I like to do is place a line after the decimal place that I'm rounding. And what we would do is look for the number to the right. In this case, it's the 5. And the rule of rounding is 4 or less, we let it rest. Anything 5 or more, we raise the score. So the number that we're looking at here is the 5. And since 5 will fall here, we are gonna raise the score. In this case, we're rounding up. So in this case, we are rounding the number 6 up. So rounding 6 up means that it will become 5.7. And anything after that will all become zeros. It will look like this. And that would be the answer. Now, if you want to see this from the visual side, let's just say we have 5 containers. And the 5 containers represents the whole number of 5. Now the 6th container that we have is not completely full. So I'm gonna shade the 5 that were full to illustrate that these represents the whole number of 5. When we have the decimal 5.65, what we are asking ourselves is this decimal closer to 5.6 or 5.7? The 10th place, we are looking at this number, but we are unsure whether this is more like a 5.6 or a 5.7 because of the number behind is 5. To illustrate, the 6th container would be about 6/10 full. But we're looking at this and trying to figure out whether it's more 6/10 or 7/10. That's where rounding comes in. Whether it's more like 6/10 or 7/10. And that's why we have the method of rounding as 4 or less, let it rest, anything 5 or more, raise the score. Since the number behind 6 is 5, so we round it up and say it's closer to 7, 5.7 than 5.6. So therefore, the 5.7 here is basically 7/10 of a container. And then if we add the 5, then it will become 5 and 7/10, which is 5.7. And that was the whole purpose of rounding, is to determine whether it's closer to, in this case, 5.7, or is it closer to 5.6. And we use the number 4 or 5 as an indicator of anything 4 or less. We will not round up. Anything that's 5 or more, then we will raise the number. So looking at the same decimal, if we have 5.64 instead, and we're rounding to the 10th place, then this would have become 5.6 rather than 5.7. The number to the right is 4, which means that we will let it rest and we wouldn't round up. Rather, we would leave the 6 as it is. Now let's try another example. A bigger number, in this case, 213.245, and we are rounding to 1 decimal place. So 1 decimal place would be 2, and we will draw a line here, and then we will look to the right for the number. In this case, 4, under the rule of rounding, we will let it rest. So we won't do anything on the 10th place. So it would become 213.2 and then 0, 0. 213.200 equals 213.2. When we are rounding to the ones place, it means that we want the final answer to have only one decimal place. And so the answer is 213.2. Now let's try this one. 15.792. Again, rounding to the one place. Let's draw a line here. Look for the number to the right. In this case, the number is 9. So under the rule of rounding, the number 9 would fall under 5 or more, which is to raise the score. So we're going to raise 7 to 8 by 1. And the rest would be 0. And the final answer would be 15.8. So by now you should be clear on how the rounding to one decimal place work. Basically, one decimal place equals to 10th value. Now we're going to work on two decimal places. So here is an example. 3.9443. Now this time we're working on two decimal places, and if we count 1, 2, so we're gonna round to the 100th place. So 2 decimal place is 100th place. And again, we're gonna go ahead and draw a line here. This way we know that we are rounding to the 100th place, and we are looking at the number to the right. In this case, is 4. So 4 will fall under the rule of rounding, let it rest. So in this case, the 4 will become 0, and we don't do anything on the 100th value. And so this will become 3.94 as we are rounding to the 100th. And that's the answer. For the next example, I have 25.4762. And in two decimal places means that we're going to round here, and we'll draw the line here, look for the number to the right, and 6 will fall under the rule of rounding. 5 or more, raise the score. So we're going to raise the 7 to 8. And anything after will become 0. And so our answer will be 25.48. A good way to also check your answer that you are rounding to the right place is you want to see if your final answer is rounded to 2 decimal places in this case. So make sure that you count 2 decimal places before submitting your answer. Now another example on rounding to 2 decimal places before we move on to 3 decimal places. 90.535. For 2 decimal places, we are rounding here. Looking at the number to the right, we have 5, which means we're going to raise the score. So we're raising 3 to 4. And 5 becomes 0. And the rest remain the same. And this will become 90.54. And that's 2 decimal places. That means that we rounded to the right decimal place. And that's our answer. Now we're going to move on to 3 decimal places. And you should be pretty clear by now how everything works. And you should probably know how to do this. And I'm going to go ahead and get right in on the example and see if you know how to do it yourself. 12.3245. And now we're working on 3 decimal places. And feel free to pause the video and work on this yourself. And then you can play the video after and see if you got it correct. So in this case, we're rounding to 3 decimal places. That's 1, 2, 3. So here it is. Looking at the number to the right, we have 5. So 5, we would raise the score. So we're raising the 4 by 1. That makes it 5. And that becomes 0. And the rest we bring down. And that becomes 12.325. Now we're rounding to 3 decimal places, so I see that this is 3 decimal places, so we're good. Now let's try this one. 125.42556. 3 decimal places is here. Draw a line. Now let's look for the number to the right. Now we have 5 again, and 5 we're raising the score, so we want to raise the score here. Plus 1, and this becomes 6. And the number 5 will become 0, as well as the number after. And the rest of the number, we would bring it down. So that's 125.426. That's 3 decimal places, and we're good. Now we'll do one more example before we get to the quiz question. 2431.51602. So that's 1, 2, 3. Now we're looking at the number to the right. 0 means that it will fall under the rule of rounding 4 or less, and let it rest. So we won't do anything with the thousandths place, so that would be 6. And the rest of the number becomes 0, and we'll bring down the rest. So we have 2431.516. 3 decimal places, and we're good to go. Alright, so now we're going to get to our quiz question. And I'm going to erase the notes to the right. So make sure that you memorize the rule of rounding. 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or more, raise the score. And know the 1 decimal place is rounding to the 10th place, 2 decimal places to the 100th place, and 3 decimal places to the 1000th place. And now I'm going to go ahead and erase. And this quiz is going to consist of 3 different questions and rounding to 1 place, 2 places, and 3 places. And here it is, 45.625. And we're rounding to 1 place. Second question, 124.748, rounding to 2 places. And 4,215.6215. And we're rounding to 3 places. Now feel free to pause the video and work on this yourself, and I will be back in 10 seconds with the answers. Okay, I'm back. So for the first question, 45.625, we're rounding to 1 place. So looking at the number to the right, this would be 4 or less, let it rest. So it will be 0. And we would leave 6 as it is. So the answer is 45.6. For the second question, 124.748, rounding to 2 places. looking to the number to the right, 8, 5 or more, raise the score. Raising the 4 by 1 becomes 5, the 8 will become 0, and then bring the rest down. And the answer is 124.75. And the last question, 4,215.6215. 3 decimal places. Look for the number on the right. 5 or more, raise the score. Becomes 0, and raising the 1 to 2. So the answer is 4,215.622. So these 3 are the answer for the quiz problem. Now if you've gotten all 3 of them correct, great job, you've mastered this lesson. However, if you didn't, feel free to go back to any of the decimal places where you have gotten it wrong and review it again. So the rounding to 1, 2, 3 decimal places is to know the rule of rounding, which is 4 or less, let it rest, 5 or more, raise the score. This is something that you have to memorize in your head. Another way of memorizing it, just think of the number 5. When a decimal has the number 5 in it, it means that it's half. And anything half or more, we're rounding up. Anything less than half, which in this case would be 4 or less, then we don't do anything. You can choose whichever way you want to memorize it. Either way, you'll be able to master decimal rounding. And knowing that 1 decimal place is for the 10th place, the 2 decimal places for the 100th, 3 decimal places for the 1000th. Hopefully this video is helpful to you, and thank you for watching.